someone, and even in, you know, other areas, they'll be associated with one or another of the secret society. So if it's an area that has different, you know, form of secret societies, and yet you see them all going back to the same thing, whether it be the Chinese, who, you know, are descended of the dragon gods, who have a divine right to rule because they're demigods, or, you know, the Greeks, who have a divine right to rule because they're demigods, or the Trojans, and, you know, and this god chose this side, and this god chose that side, and you can follow the symbols, like you were saying. I have recently picked up, when I was in Turkey and Greece this summer, I picked up couple of reproductions of certain coins that were used, and they're accurate reproductions of the ancient coins. And of course, on the Trojan coin is the bee, right? And you know, Paris is Paris because Paris is the Trojan prince, and you know, the Merovingian bloodline is descendant of the Trojan monarchy, and you know, there you have the beehive and the three bees again, you know, and then you see you know. The other side in the Trojan War with the goddess, right? You know, Athena and the owl, and you know, then that goes back to and so it's unbelievable. And then you see, you know, these symbols, you know, from these sort of you know, different alignments with these different gods and or extraterrestrials, if you like, you know, being displayed now, so that, you know, we have that little owl on our dollar bill or whatnot, and
which is not Molech. Let me just make that clear. If you get to this information and you start to realize that your leaders are dressing up in red and black Ku Klux Klan outfits and worshiping a 40-foot stone owl, burning baby effigies in front of it, when you realize that these are who your leaders are, and you turn to Alex Jones to show you the film of this ritual going on with all of the leaders there, he'll tell you that it's Molech, okay? The reason that Alex Jones selected Molech to say this is that was because this was the only god form he knew of that they burnt babies to. And being somewhat of a biblical Christian, he hadn't expanded his ideas into other mythos and other cultures, and didn't realize that the owl is our goddess. Okay, so...
And also that so many of the Christian rituals have to do with the goddess. You look at the Easter eggs. The eggs were dyed red originally because they were dyed in the blood of the sacrifice. The sacrifice which was conceived on the Vestal Virgin 9 months before, you know, and the ritual, or not 9 months before, but 1 year before, on the same day they conceived on the Vestal Virgin, and then the 3-month-old baby, which, you know, 9 months plus, you know, and then that baby is and then the eggs are dyed in that, and it goes back to Tammuz, it goes back to Semiramis, it goes back to Babylon, and of course all the Babylonian stuff goes back to Sumeria, and they say directly that that's where they're taking it from, and you know, I mean, even have the two translations on certain texts where one side is in the Sumerian and the other is in the Akkadian or in the Babylonian.
Right.
Sorry.
No, that's good. All right. You're leading me in many directions, because when you look to Semiramis, you find that archetypal mer goddess, the fish goddess. You know, Starbucks logo with the pentagram. And you can't see it these days, but when you see those things up by her head that you think are her hands, those are her ankles. Okay? This is how they used to explain sex with the fish people. Because they were like, well, they must have a split tail, right? That's the only way, so they call it Skyla. And that is Starbucks logo. And once you start to realize that all of the symbolism that you see around you actually pertains to the inner rituals of Freemasonry, that's when the clues just open up for you all over the place. And you have to have enough understanding of their rituals and the signs and symbolism, which is Kabbalah, which takes you to Hebrew. So you have to be able to understand. So when you look at the space shuttles alone, okay, the Columbia endeavored for the discovery of Atlantis, and the Challenger is destroyed, right? This is not happenstance. This didn't just happen. They entitled these. Now there was, of course, Enterprise as well, the space shuttle, but this was inserted by Richard Hoagland, who started a major campaign to say we need an Enterprise in our new Navy, the space shuttles. And so the Enterprise was not initially in the titles of the space shuttle. It was Columbia Endeavor for Discovery of Atlantis. Challenger's destroyed. This is all purposeful, and every single sign and message that you see around you, from the golden arches to the sun sign on target, have purpose and meaning within a Masonic ritual. So, and within the history. And so now we have our goddess, Queen Semiramis, who is the lead founder of Babylon, right? Her and Nimrod.
And Athens, and I mean.
Well, then the goddess transfers. She comes along. She becomes Ishtar. She becomes Isis. She becomes Minerva, Athena, all the way up into Columbia, who is America's goddess, or Britannia in England. This fish goddess, the Mer goddess, she's always shown as Venus, and she's shown coming up out of a shell. And of course, this is Shell's logo. And then she's symbolized by a pentagram, because Venus makes a five-pointed star every 8 years as viewed from Earth. And this is what you're told when you are raised as a master mason inside of the lodge. So right after you end up, I got one shot of my dad I could show you right after the ritual where you can just see he's transcended. When you are raised as the worshipful master, and I'll show you in that picture, there's a pentagram behind you. Well, it's in front of you, behind the worshipful master, and he raises you. Now, one thing I wanted to say was that in the Masonic ritual, you are pretending to be this character, Hiram Abiff. And Hiram Abiff is this mysterious worker that came with King Hiram of Tyre to build Solomon's temple to house the Ark of the Covenant. Now, what is the Ark of the Covenant? So we look at the Ark of the Covenant, and we find a man called Moses following a UFO to a mountain, where a burning bush then tells him how to design the proper stones to place into a golden acacia box that is a perfect electromagnetic conductor, and use it as a weapon of mass destruction against their enemy, right? Let's be clear what the Ark of the Covenant is. You can talk about the Ten Commandments being housed in there and whatever, but when you look to the true story, you find Moses going up the mount after following a column of smoke and a column of fire, right? And he goes up to the mountain, he meets with the Lord, whichever Lord you want to put in there, right? And he is given the directions to craft stones. And he does this himself, but no, God does it, translates for him, right? Because Moses knew the language of God, and this was one of the rarities for him. He came down the mountain with these stones and nothing happened. Okay, so he's sitting there and he sees them worshiping the golden calf. He melts down the golden calf, and we all know what happens when you melt gold. It turns into liquid, but not in the Bible. It becomes powder, which takes us to the ideas of transforming to monoatomic gold.
Yeah.
Then he goes back up the mountain, meets with the Lord of the mountain again, and this time the Lord says, well, you have to do it yourself. And so he says, all right, and he crafts the stones himself. He brings them back down the mountain. This time they radiate. This time they show a glow that is beyond, and from that moment on, Moses has to wear a veil over his face. He stashes these things into this perfectly sized, very dimensional. When you read the Douay Bible, it has the exact dimensions of the Ark of the Covenant and how to put this together. He put in a few more things like the staff and the rod and laid those things in there, and all of a sudden it becomes a weapon of mass destruction that they have to cover all in hides, because anyone that gets near it dies of radiation poisoning. It gets stolen from them, according to Graham Hancock, brought all around Ethiopia, and ended up with the Falashas. And every time a king would open this, they'd die of a withering disease where they lost their hair and sores came. Well, so finally they were like, give it back to the Jews, right? And so they have to bring in Hiram, King Hiram of Tyre, in order to build a building that's capable of housing this weapon. And he brings with him this strange man, Hiram, another Hiram. So get Hiram and Hiram coming out of Tyre. In the Bible he's known as Hiram the Copper Worker, but in Masonic lore he's Hiram Abiff. And he actually has a place in Walt Disney World, if you want to see. On the Thunder Mountain. Yeah, they got the Hiram Abiff working tools. If you man, when you look, it's everywhere. And Walt Disney was the original D. Molay. He was one of the first. Started right here in Kansas City. So Hiram, King Hiram of Tyre, is one that Zechariah Sitchin lists as having left the planet. Everybody misses that sentence because I'm attuned to Freemasonry. So when I see Hiram and I see, I'm like, who? What's going on here? So I caught the one sentence that he put in there to say that King Hiram of Tyre was like Enoch or like Ezekiel and had been taken off the planet. And I was like, well, there's another extraterrestrial connection to Freemasonry. Another point to this is that King Hiram of Tyre is the description that people use to say Satan fell from heaven. Because the concept of Lucifer does not exist in the Bible. There is no tale in the Bible of this great superior angel that was so beautiful and beloved of God that he wanted to be as the Most High and fell to earth. That story is not in the Bible. Anywhere. Nowhere. And the word Lucifer did not occur in the Bible until the King James Version, which I believe was written by Sir Francis Bacon, as is nom de plume, Shakespeare.
Well, Satan and Lucifer are completely two different things. I mean, Lucifer was the light that preceded the light of God. So Lucifer is Venus, the morning light, and to this day, in a number of languages, if you ask for a Lucifer, you will receive a match.
Exactly. Okay, so let's have a look at that, shall we? Lucifer is Venus, who is Isis, and we have this merfolk goddess that is connected with Sirius, right? Because Isis in the Egyptian pantheon was Sirius. And now the Egyptian obelisk, or the Egyptian symbol or hieroglyph for Sirius, is an obelisk, a dome, and a pentagram. Now you go down to the capital of Texas, Austin, Texas, and they have the clock tower, which Charles Whitman shot many people from. A statue of George Washington right there, a fine Freemason in his apron. And just in front of that is the goddess Columbia. It says Columbia on the boat, that she's being drawn forth by fishmen riding fish horses. And actually that's her right there, and on the official Freeman mouse pad. But so you see the Starbucks logo, the comparison with the goddess. In ancient Egypt, she was the pentagram goddess that was created or asked to go slaughter all of mankind, and then Ra fell guilty and turned her into Hathor. But the mermen are busy pulling our goddess Columbia with her angel wings off into the future, and behind them, and then that's George Washington, is the golden big red phallus, right? But the obelisk, and then directly due north of that is the Capitol dome, with the goddess standing on top of it holding a pentagram. So you have a bigger than life-size hieroglyph of Sirius as our capitals everywhere, right? Then you realize that she is this fallen angel, and you see that at this statue, which is right where they house Aleister Crowley's Book of the Law, where he channeled the Atlantean Awas at the pyramids. The official written manuscript is at the Harry Ransom Center right next to this goddess. And to her left and to her right is a pentagram and a shell. Now these were placed there in 1933 by an Italian Freemason who designed this for the other Freemason, I can't think of his name. The pentagram and shell. You're back to Texaco and shell. Well, when you start to decipher the corporate logos around you, you realize that all of the major players are involved in this game that you're unaware of. And if you're not aware of this game, then you don't realize how you're being programmed, conditioned through mythology. And to the point where, when I learned about the American Revolution, it was through a film by Walt Disney that they showed me in class about the Sons of Liberty, right? Our goddess, again, right? The Freemasons, the Sons of Liberty. And it showed us how all these great men came together to throw off the shackles of monarchy and to give us freedom by tossing tea into the bay. Completely ignoring the fact that they had all just walked out of a Mason temple. Because they were all Masons, every last one of them. Paul Revere to Benedict Arnold, they're all Masons. And they came together and they performed a mythological event. We could call it what we call now false flag terrorism. And so the Boston Tea Party was nothing more than that. And when we then learned that all of the first presidents were Freemasons, up to the first 13, I can pull you out the Masonic Holy Bible and show you the list. I can show you their lodges. They were all members of the Freemasons. Then you take the fact that once you take the Freemason level to presidency, then you take lineage, and you realize, oh my God, all these guys are actually related. So did we actually really displace the monarchy? Did we just give it a new face, a new sheen, and change monarch every 4 years or 8? So you realize that these Masons were actually after a system. And so the system has to keep going. And to the point where we were talking about the different races